Okay, I'm ready now. So how is the sound? Just tell me in the chat if it's okay. Okay, so what you're seeing here on the screen is yesterday's game. Oh, sounds good. That's great. So this is against the Japanese affiliated player who I know as Yoseki, and he's from Taipei, so he has a Chinese name, and I can't pronounce it, but I'll try. It's Yu Chenji or something like that. I'll spell it out. So I'll put it in the chat here. Let's see. I know how it's spelled. I have it down here. Yeah. Well, since I can't pronounce it, it's probably not important, but I'll let you see it. Hopefully someone who knows how to pronounce that will help, but yeah. So that's the player. He's a Japanese. He's in the Japanese Go Association, so he's representing Japan, and he played ShinJinseo yesterday. So let's take a look at that game. Today's match starts in about half an hour, so we have, or more like 25 minutes now. So I'll just quickly go through this game, and I do want to talk in particular about this knight's move, because it's a move that I play a lot in similar positions, and it's a bit tricky, and you have to be careful about that attachment at E17. So, first of all, let's talk about it in the upper right corner, because this is a point where my computer disagreed with what black played. So in this game, ShinJinseo is white. Oh, so that matches what I have written down there. But his opponent in this game is not KJ yet. It's Yoseki. And at this point, black is supposed to add a stone to the upper left. And I think the thing here is that this attachment here, it's very, very dangerous. So if black gets a stone on the side like this, then it's going to be okay. Then white's not going to be able to do it. So for instance, if there's a stone there and white does this, oh, sorry, not that way. But when this happens, that black stone is functioning at 1. The black stone at 1 is functioning as a hanging connection. So it's so black's just going to capture these stones. So it's just not working. And white can continue in the upper right, or white can continue on the left side. So if white plays here, black can pincer on the left side. That's good. And it's not as if that corner is in any trouble. Or if white plays on the left side, black can play here. And white will probably do something like this. So I'm going to use this diagram. Let's just say black does something like... Black has a... black 5 is not sort of mandatory, but let's just say black played there. And I'll show you some things that can happen when it's this Joseki. You might notice that black has one extra stone here. Black has played the attachment there. If we compare it to this position in the upper left, black has just a little bit more space. So when I'm playing with black in this case, when I'm playing the side that is kicked in the corner, or has played the attachment at P17 in the corner, I feel okay with playing that knight's move at 3 when I have this shape. Because, for instance, there's two main variations. In this case, black's probably just going to play here. If something like this happens, then in some cases, white's going to be able to curl a few times on the second time and live. Like in this board position, it's probably not even working with a black stone there. But if we assume the white group lives, then eventually white will be playing this and black will be able to live in the corner. And it was that extra space that made it popular. That made it possible. Sorry about that. So, looking at the same kind of thing happening in the upper left corner, even if white just does it immediately, And if we do the same kind of thing here, you can see this is working slightly better for white. But also, when white plays this move, the black corner is going to die. So you can see that there's less room for black in the corner. And there's also an issue, even if black plays the other variation, which is for black to play here. For instance, so like this is not necessarily how it's going to turn out. But when this kind of thing happens, white can live on the side, and black needs another move in the corner. This is actually pretty close. The corner situation there is sort of similar to what happened in the actual game. But the fact that black doesn't have this extra stone expanding his corner territory, and the corner territory is just one line smaller, it makes it all that much more difficult. GoDave is asking, this is Yoseki, and his opponent is SGS, ShinJinseo. So ShinJinseo is white in this game. And it's yesterday's game. So I'm just giving a little recap here. And mostly I'm going to be talking about this Joseki, because this is where Yoseki messed up for the first time. So he played here, and white got to extend. And now that attachment in E17, it's really, really serious. So what he did in the game was he played a pincer, and white immediately played this move. But what he should have done is he should have answered here. So basically, when you play this knight's move here, or if black could, let's just go back a few moves to have black play this knight move. Same thing here. A rule of thumb is that if white gets close to it, you should probably be protecting with some kind of an extension to the side. So it's something you need to do. And in the game, black tried to be a bit more efficient by playing here. And so, for instance, if white plays here, then black's going to play here. That would be very efficient. Or if white plays something like this, then that weak point is going to sort of naturally disappear. But it seems to have been slightly an overplay. So white plays here. That's the weak point of black's shape. So in particular, when you've just kicked in the corner at c16, and then you play this knight's move, you have to be very careful of this move, which can happen immediately. And so it's that dangerous. Whereas just going back to this move, if black plays here, this is not going to happen immediately, just because black has that one extra stone there, enlarging black's corner shape. It's not as serious. So white, in this case, white will usually be playing something from the side first, and aiming to play that attachment next. So black has more time to deal with it. So that's my my take on that whole knight's move thing. And in the game, this is already looking bad. Like white's connected up there. There's no way black can do anything about it. And black needs another move on the side, in the corner that is. So black just played here. This is threatening the double hane. So when black plays here, he's strengthened these two stones so that next time he can do a double hane. So this would be bad news for white. So cutting on the top, there's no attack against the two stones. And cutting here, white's going to lose the cutting stones here. So this would be a failure. This would be good for black. Or if white connects, everything's going to die. So that's not going to work either. So back to the game. Yeah, so black plays here. Obviously, he couldn't play the double hane yet, because then white would cut here and capture two stones on the top. So that's what he's doing with this move. White protected. Black played here to live in the corner. And white saved the stones. So this was another turning point in this game. Okay, Call Me Q is saying, does playing a one-space jump from d17 to f17 prevent this cut? So yes, if black had played instead of playing the original knight's move, playing a one-space jump at the f17 point, he wouldn't have that kind of issue. Would not be a problem. So back to the game. And he played here. So apparently black felt that he didn't have enough strength to continue fighting here. But it looks like he should have just continued for the time being. So if black plays here and here, then the move that black is probably afraid of is this one, pushing through and cutting. But black can play 7. This is kind of a threatening move there, threatening to play at h17. And if white answers it, now black can play something like this, and this would be a collapse for white. So if white plays something like this, now this is the variation I worked out, it's not really working for white because black's still threatening J18 and D13. So this is not working for white. If he was worried about that, he didn't have to. So this is going to be bad for white. What white actually is probably going to do is he's probably going to play a pincer here. And white has local co-threats, such as the push here or moves like this in the corner. So white has co-threats. Black can't play an Atari at A12 because white would just start a ko there. So maybe something like this. My computer was showing me a variation like this. Let's see, it was like this. So that was Karago. Yeah. Helped by Karago, I got to this one. This would have been better for black, but it's still okay for white because white's improved the position here, getting about 10 points extra territory, you might say, when that turns into a territory. Black has just defended this area, which was sort of, black had the corner to start with, and white's getting pretty efficient development towards the lower left. So on the whole, it's working okay for white. The whole board position, that is. Well, in the game, black tried this, and it just wasn't, didn't seem to work. Like now white has a position on the left. Yeah, this is what happens when you play against ShinJinseo. He's a tough customer. And so black doesn't really want to play there's a lot of bad forcing moves he could play against the left side. He doesn't want to do that. So he plays here. This is a big co-threat. And white has a slight lead. The interesting thing is the upper left side here. If black cuts here, it's a huge move because it has to do with black's life or death in the corner. But it's not exactly forcing. So if white plays somewhere else and black plays here, we get this position where white's happy he didn't play this forcing move, like you would automatically play it. In this case, it's going to kill the white stones. White loses the semi. But if white has not played that move and just covers at 6 here at G18, then usually white has an advantage in this race to capture because black has no pushing move at this time. So it's what they call, in Japanese, they call it osute nashi, no pushing move. Or if black is desperate for a ko, black can play here and make a ko out of it. So this would be a one-step approach move ko is what we call it. It means basically that even if white plays away, black's going to need one more move and then it's a direct ko. So it's not such a serious thing for white. Like it takes enough moves for black that white can probably be happy even losing this ko in some cases. So first of all, black has to find a good ko threat. And white can be doing stuff like this. Maybe playing it even earlier to increase the value of the ko threat. White has various things that white can try doing. So yeah, so what I just said was, for instance, white could play it instead of 10. And then if black did something like this, white would have a lot of ko threats starting from R17. So there's various ways that white can handle this problem. So a one-step approach move ko is not really a big issue for white. So that's why black was not cutting at E18. Yes, and it's just getting very difficult already. Like, this is bad shape locally. And just showing you the moves now. We're approaching time for the game, I believe. Yeah, we still have about 10 minutes. So black at this point is sort of hoping to break through here. So if white answers on this side, black can break through and isolate white in the center. White does have an advantage in territory. Oh yes, one thing I can show you that's worthwhile. Let's just go back a bit. In this corner in the lower right, usually it's dead. But there is something that can happen. So, for instance, a move that I see a lot when I'm analyzing with AlphaGo, for instance, I see it suggests this move a lot, and nothing's happening here locally. But it sort of depends on how black tries to kill it. So, as far as this side is concerned, if black plays here, that deals with all of the potential. There's no Aji there, and white's dead locally. White's dead locally, but that's the important word here, because the way it dies is that if black plays like this and then plays like this is actually a bent 4 in the corner. It's what the shape that they call a bent 4 in the corner. And in Japanese rules, it's ruled as dead. In Chinese rules, they have to play it out. In most of the cases, it's dead anyway, but there are some exceptions. So what I'm talking about here is that eventually it's going to be a shape like this, and white cannot do anything. Obviously, if white plays anything, white's just going to die here. So white has to leave it, and black will leave it until black has gotten rid of all the co-threats. Theoretically, black just gets rid of all the co-threats at the end of the game, and can eventually play here, and it's a ko which black takes first. So in actual practice, it's going to die every time, because black can, in the Chinese rules, if they start filling their own territory after the game is completely over, they're not losing anything. So it's a difference in how they finish the games. They can fill up get rid of all the co-threats and then kill it, unless there's a seki on the board, which is the exception. In the Japanese rules, they don't want to do that, so they just say it's dead. So they're avoiding the process there, which sometimes gives you a different result, but it's most of the time it's dead in either rule set anyway. Hope that wasn't too confusing. Going back to the situation here, in actual play, sometimes white can play a hane underneath here. And if black answers it, then this is going to be alive. Or if black cuts on this side, sometimes white can escape out. And so there is some potential there. It can be a bit of a headache for black. So something like this might happen. In some cases, white's going to be able to escape. So something like this, maybe white's going to be able to escape here. So there is a bit of an issue there waiting to happen. And if black tries to avoid this diagram, then it's going to get more complicated when white does this. So for instance, if black does something like this, there's going to be issues with white playing moves like this or like this. So in this case, it's going to be bad Aji in that direction. So this corner is not actually 100% dead. And AlphaGo likes me to play this kind of move fairly early. It wants to see it wants to see what black's going to do about this move. So maybe that sort of links up to the question by Thomas Lee, was asking about the lower right corner. The real reason white gave it away because they were fighting the ko on the top side here, and that ko was really important too. And the trade was actually good for white. So that's why white gave up the corner. But it is a fact that you're supposed to make trouble for black by playing at 1 at some point. Okay, that's Howard the Landman giving a number of examples of how there's a lot of exceptions to whether or not that would be dead in the Chinese rule set. So white bumps against here. And locally here, it looks like black is winning the race to capture. Usually black would win the race to capture here because the black stones have 4 liberties and white has only 3. So black should be winning, only white has this move, which is an Atari, and if black connects, white can connect up to the corner. So that's the move that ShinJinseo had ready here. And also black was prepared to play this ko, so it's going to turn into a ko. If black had extended with this move, the 3 stones on the left here, these 3 stones would be saved. But white can now win against the other stone. So in this case, white would, or would he? I guess he would play here and squeeze to connect on the side. And then, yeah, capture the 3 other stones. So it became a ko. And white had this ko threat. And it turns out that the black group in the corner is dead now. So that's that trade was okay for white also. You can see that this corner in the lower left was not hurt at all by this ko. So it was just this on the side here that black gained. So here it was an interesting shape where white can kill it with this move. So this was the important move here. If black takes, white will just play here. Black can still try this kind of stuff. It's just not working. So if black plays here now, this becomes a forcing move. And it's a snapback-like shape. So black has to play on the left here, and nothing's happening. Otherwise, if black sort of desperately tries to make a ko out of it, in this case, white has 2 ways to deal with this. I believe white can play here and capture from this side, or white can just play here anyway. And in this case, it's going to be a double ko. So black can play a ko threat. Let's see, I don't find any ko threats anyway. Let's just put 2 stones on the board. Black can play a ko threat. But white can take the other ko. So this is a double ko, and no way black can win it. So there's nothing there. It's a kind of a complicated position that requires a little bit of reading, but so it's annoying for black that there's nothing doing there. So black has cut white off in the center here. And black's only hope is to maybe capture or really bully these stones, because white has a lot of territory now in the upper left. So it's looking good for white. And he plays this move. It's supposed to be a forcing move. I think if black had played here, white probably would have just played like this to make a shape in the center. So white's sort of preparing to get some forcing moves, maybe this one, getting a little space here in the center, so that in the end, white's going to be able to live there. And it's not going to be a problem for white because this black group on the lower side, sometimes it has lack of liberties. We're probably going to see that in the game, but sometimes this clump of stones can get into Damezumari. White still has 2 liberties on the left here. So when white gets stones in this vicinity, when white gets stones around here, this black group is very short of liberty. So that actually happened, something similar to that happened in the game. Okay, let's go back here. So in the game, black ignored that attachment and played here, after which that black group in the center, it's already dead. So that was, well, he was in a bad position. So he was in trouble already. And he's trying dangerous stuff, so it's not working very well. Also, Yoseki was already in his overtime at this point, so he's just having a bad day. And ShinJinseo is a tough opponent. So, for instance, if black had played here, this would already be annoying when white plays here, for instance. It's already annoying because there's a huge lack of liberties there. And also there's a cut on the outside, which is going to work to a certain degree. So I guess this was not a good idea. And in the game, he allowed white to connect up here. And finally, white lived on the side. So we're coming to the time for, let's see. I don't think they've started quite yet, but we're coming up to the time for today's game to start. So let's just show you the final moves here. Yeah, so the whole, like a quarter of the board has become, oh, sorry about that. It's still there. Good. The whole quarter of the board has become white's territory. This part of the board, it's all white's territory. And so it was a pretty spectacular win for ShinJinseo. Seemed to be one of his easier wins in this whole series. So today, ShinJinseo is going to play against KJ. And I have KJ as black just temporarily. I don't know who's going to play which color yet. So let's see. Oh, they've started. Oh, I had good luck. So let's get rid of that. And let's find the game. Yeah, that looks right. Okay, here we are. So this is today's game with KJ playing with black. And so just by chance, I had him listed as the right color there. And white is ShinJinseo. An interesting fact is that before he played Miyuting, ShinJinseo actually had a perfect, well, not perfect, but he had a record of something like 21 wins. I think they were saying 21 wins against Chinese players. And so if we don't count an old game, then he has 22 wins against Chinese players now. So that's pretty outstanding. But I think actually KJ is in the world ranking. He's ranked as number 2. So they're, as far as ranking is concerned, they're the 2 top players in the world. That's what makes this a special game for me today. So it's black's move. I think this is similar to the game he played against Miyuting. Was it the day before yesterday? And in that game, Miyuting was playing here. So ShinJinseo has white again. Yeah, that game, I think it was something like this. And maybe it was this way. Oh, the upper left corner was a 3-4 point. So it's not quite exactly the same. Yeah, because black played a Kakari there after that. Yes. Okay, so KJ plays a big Shimari. So that's more according to what computers tend to like. And white plays this card. So the one-space pincer here, wow, they're so quick. That's one of the moves that you can play against the Kakari here. So let's just follow the game for a while. So in the case of white pressing at the, okay. Just let me do it just a little bit. So generally when black plays a pincer, you have to worry about computers will give you a bad score for black when white plays this pressing move. And if black is forced to play like this, and maybe white's going to do something like this, or maybe like this. So the computer programs tend to give white a better score when this happens. But when black has played the one-space pincer, black can push through and cut here. So this is one of the pincers that people still like to play. So in the game, white didn't play locally. And playing away from this is something that we see a lot. So if black answers on this side, then this is going to change how things turn out when white does stuff like this and starts a fight there. That stone there on the side is going to help white a bit. So that's how I understand it. So let's try to catch up with the game. They're moving so quickly. So black added a stone to the corner. White could have played away, and then black would have finished off the lower right corner. White fights locally here. Okay, yeah. That far ahead, huh? Let's just show the moves then. So white connects up to the side, and at the speed they played that, I suppose they had it researched. This has become the day where people research the games much more than before, just because they have computer programs giving them scores. So, they just research the openings and the fact that this game they only have 1 hour in the main time. It does make it important to be able to use your time efficiently, because it would be bad to get into time trouble. There's only 1 hour and 1 minute per move after that. So I guess that's it for the opening. So now white has solid territories. It's very much, I would say this is very much ShinJinseo's style. He just loves territory, and he's a good fighter also. So white has about 10 points in the lower left corner, maybe about 15 points in the upper left corner, less than 10 points on the right side. So something like 35 points. Black doesn't really have any territory yet. And the reason they can do this is because they've researched fairly deeply, and they're playing variations that are playing quickly and badly is not an option really at this level. So it's a good thing they're playing. They know what they're doing basically, so they can play quickly. So it's their study, their day-to-day study that allows them to do this. So black has played this jump to expand the left side. I think the other option would have been to play something on the lower side. This position here black has in the lower right, it's sort of unfinished. So black could have been doing something on the side. Yeah, okay, so something like this, for instance. I think that was another option. So that's a big move. This is a big move on the upper side. This is secondary, but it does have some potential to take away white space on the right side. So it's a large move maybe, and of course some kind of a pincer here. So these are the 4 areas that the players are sort of looking at as they continue playing. Okay. Okay, so white has slowed down a bit. I'd say white has an option maybe of attacking black a little bit on the lower side. So for instance, let's see, I'd say something like this actually. So for instance, something like this, approaching black on the lower side would be an option. Maybe the upper side. I think the lower side, it looks a bit wide open here. Yes. Okay. I see that people in YouTube are talking about the GoDave89 is talking about how the tournament is set up, because this is not the final round. This is round 13, and the winner of this game will play the final Japanese player. So there was a period where in this tournament where Yama was winning a lot of games. He ended up with just having four wins. But R9. R9. That's interesting. So when Yama was winning, maybe some people were wondering if he would finish off the tournament, in which there would be some leftover Japanese players. But it didn't happen that way. unfortunately for Japan. But there were two other Japanese players. So Yoseki, who played yesterday, and there's also Ichiriki. So Ichiriki is left over, and the players today are the two top players, the final players for China and Korea. So the winner plays Ichiriki tomorrow, and that will be the final game of the tournament. Right, and Ichiriki is maybe the one player who can give Yama a lot of trouble. So, um, he's one of the strongest Japanese players. So if Yama has a chance, I'd say Ichiriki also has a chance against ShinJinseo. The Ings Cup final. I've been so busy with this tournament, I haven't had time to think about the other tournaments right now. R9, yeah, going after White's eyes. So the move that was being discussed here, let's see, I should get back to the game. Okay, they've been playing some moves. White clamped here, so that's a very aggressive move. It's something you do against this shape, where black has kind of a diagonal shape there and two cutting points, and white cannot cut either of them. So it's a position where white can't cut here, and generally cutting on the outside also is not a very effective move usually. For the timing, it's probably even a ladder. Yes, it's even a ladder, but even if black ends up playing here, it's usually not such good shape. So white clamps first, and if black actually played here, but if black played something like this, oh sorry, let's do it this way. If black played something like this, white would have one more forcing move, either going straight down or jumping. Jumping also is a way white could force there and play a move towards the side. So sort of forcing black to connect all the cutting points is what white's trying to do. And black doesn't really want to be submissive here. So connecting underneath again, white can cut immediately, or maybe white's just going to be playing something like this and asking black to connect up. Because connecting up here, it is a kind of a clumpy move that's not so effective. So black played here, sort of forcing white to cut. And we get into this fight, where black has, for the time being, has sacrificed those 4 stones. And so after establishing the potential to capture the 4 stones, white plays away. I guess that makes sense. So in this case, black's not going to play R9 anymore. So the move that was being suggested at some point was black playing here. That was a move black would have... it's on the low on the second line, so it's not usual for black to do this kind of thing. But when this white group was weak, it's something that maybe black could have been thinking of. Now that white's strong, he's probably not going to play it. Okay. Black extended on the third line. P4, P4. P4 is a move. That's something that people do. Okay, so who was it who was asking? Oh, Leonardo. Gently threading a stone in at P4. That's interesting. Playing at P4 is a move. It's a way you can attack the corner. Let's just make a variation for that. So here, if black plays here and white plays here, then white can connect up to the side. White would usually be sacrificing the 2 stones on the right. This is one way it can happen. if black plays a honey on the outside, and then it depends on the ladder. Let's see what the ladder looks like. Yeah, the ladder looks good for black. So if the ladder was good for white, white would play here, and it looks like it's probably a ladder. So if this is a ladder, it's bad for white. There was a period where I was using Lila a lot, and it sometimes made mistakes with ladders, as everyone knows. But this ladder is actually, it's just barely going to be bad. Now let's leave it. It's going to be good for black. So much for that. And so in this case, white would have to go straight down, and probably something like this, or something like this. Yeah, this might be how black plays. And white could leave it or play something like this, I suppose. White is connected on the side, so it's not as if it can get cut off. So this would be sort of the plan. Okay, it's still white's turn here, so I haven't missed anything. Q9 was the fine art move. I just saw that. Okay, Sedgwick was saying that Q9 was the... And that would be a way of trying to reinforce the corner with an attachment. But yeah, it's probably... The time for that move is sort of past. But I saw it, so don't worry about that. Okay, so white white does have that kind of stuff towards the upper right corner, which is realistic. It's something that could happen. Or the left side now. I'd say the lower side is getting to be relatively smaller just because this position white has in the lower left corner is basically it's alive as it stands. So it's very solid. And black's lower right corner, that's also a very strong group. When you have strong groups like this, any move towards the side, so like a move like any move around here, it's not as big as you might think. Like it might be covering some area on the side, but it's just that it's just the territory. It's not changing the status of any of the groups because the black group and the white group, they're both already strong. So it could be close to 20 points, but it's just purely territorial move, so it's like a big endgame move. People would probably think of this as an endgame move. So the left side, on the other hand, that's a kind of a hot area. He hasn't played anything yet. So the left side, if white does something like this, this is actually going to start a fight. So this is not just the, say, 20 or so points that black could potentially get there. It's also the potential attacking on those black stones, or in any case, a fight towards the center. So this is a move that has some action in it. So that would, I would suggest this left side area as an option that's apart from the upper right corner. So it's one of those two areas. So what ShinJinseo, oh, okay. So he's going for the upper right corner. So I wasn't really sure whether he was trying to decide which area to move into next or how to deal with the upper right corner. So it was that kind of a position where he could have been thinking about one or the other. So when white plays here, this is going to link up to actually a placement in the corner. So actually, yeah. Okay, so black didn't answer it. So if black had answered here, white might even have... I was thinking maybe this way, or maybe actually even this way, in which case white can wedge here, and you can see there's a lot of cutting points. So this would be really... It would be probably bad for black with with this hane here also. So white has all sorts of stuff that white can do. You can see all those black stones on the second line. It doesn't look good. So black ignored it, you might say, played on this side. Right. James Sedgwick is, they're still discussing that attachment at Q9, I think. But he's saying the attachments are more strongly sente. It's something you see a lot with computer analysis, is that they really like to play an attachment instead of a pin, just an extension. So using that for myself, sometimes it's difficult. But I can understand that they are trying to be more forceful in the way they play. And sometimes that's important. So it's sort of like in a case like this where the white group on the right side of the board, it, for instance, if white plays a kosumi on the second line here, it's going to be a live shape. So this is a group that is sort of one step away from having a living shape on the side. In this case, it also is one step away from capturing 4 black stones in the center. It's not really a weak group. And when your opponent has a sort of a semi-strong group there like this, then sometimes it's okay to play an attachment and make it a bit stronger while reinforcing your own position. So instead of playing the attachment that I was showing in the diagram, black is strengthening the corner, trying to strengthen it indirectly. So if white does something like this, this will reinforce the corner, and it will force white to do something with this stone left alone on the side. So he's attacking on a large scale with this move. And white probably wants to find something a bit unusual, something a bit more active than the move I just showed. Or otherwise, yes. This would leave a little bit more potential in the corner, so with moves like this maybe, or an attachment like this. Maybe this way. Sometimes you see something like this with the computer programs. Yes. So this would leave a little bit more room in the corner. So, or if white can find something, so for instance, if this worked, it would be ideal. So if white could do something like this, maybe that would be a bit better. So this is where they're starting to actually have to think about their moves and read out variations. So that's how they're slowing down just a little bit. Okay, white extended. So this is, yes, heading into the corner, also threatening the cut. So directly, this is just a basic shape here, where black has pretty much gotten rid of the threat to cut, because black can cut against white also. And this is usually just going to be very painful for white. So black doesn't, oh, okay, yeah. I think we've done this diagram already. And so sometimes white will be trying to set up that cut that I was just showing. But for the time being, white's going to try to play forcing moves against the corner. So in particular, I was talking about this move, or maybe this one. Right. I agree with GoDave89 that it's the discussion of that attachment at Q9. It was very situation dependent, and so it doesn't have anything to do with this board position. That's why I've sort of left it to the viewers. So and I didn't really understand how it was working myself. So don't worry about the fact that you don't fully understand it. You have company. Okay, so the automatic response would be to play a honey underneath at P3. So that would be my snap response. And I guess white would be doing this. So when he doesn't do that, I sort of wonder if he's thinking of something else. I'm still going to go with this. This is the move that is easy for me to understand. P5. Thumper always wants to play P5. So that would be this, maybe in this position. So yeah, Thumper wants to play here. Now this is a ladder, but there's a problem with it because black can play here. And let's see, see if I can figure this one out. And this is going to be a ladder breaking move. And so this could be a problem for white. Q5. Q5, yes. If black plays Q5, okay, he's looks like he's looking at that ladder variation that I was just showing. But anyway, going down to extend the 2 stones to 3 stones is something that, for instance, if I'm researching with AlphaGo or any neural network, they almost always want to play this move. So it's a move that they play fairly early, probably before all this stuff in the upper right started, because I suppose sometimes it's not forcing. Yes. And so once black plays, it's interesting because usually human players think this is big enough, this Sagari here is big enough to be a co-threat. But of course, sometimes it might not be. But after white answers it, for instance, like this, and then black curls around, then it's going to be more forceful. So it is, in a way, it is increasing the size of the co-threat. So black played there and then wedged here. So this is actually what Thumper wanted to do. So Thumper got it right. And so if white does answer on the outside, and white cannot capture that black stone at 4, then this is probably not so good. So if black, again, if white tries to play here, black can play this forcing move, and the ladder is not valid. If white's forced to play from behind here, not only is black strong on that side, but also black has this cut here to destroy white on the upper side. And so white's not gaining very much. So instead, white cut from underneath. Okay. And looks like white is starting to build the right side. So in this position, I'd say okay, so the players have kind of a symmetrical almost position where black has this position in the upper right corner, which is similar in its the size of the territory to white's upper left corner. So they have these two corners, and then the lower left corner and the lower right corner. Black has a bit more actually in both of these corners, but they're similar in size. And then white has this position on the right side, and black has that position on the left side. So I'm not sure which of those is bigger either. So the established territories are pretty close to each other, and the areas, like the moyo areas, on the left for black and on the right for white, they look fairly similar in size anyway. Also, maybe white is closer to a territory and black has a bit more space. So it's going to be kind of a battle between those two areas now. Okay, James Sedgwick is giving us the fine art win rate for white, 77%. Yeah. So yeah, 1 point ahead or something like that. Q5. Okay, so black is starting with the pincer on the top. And so if black plays another move, the diagonal move on the third line. Okay, so let's just random move here. If black plays here, it's going to be really difficult for white to do anything with those 3 stones. So that's what the threat there is. And I'd say if white ends up playing something underneath like this, then black might just be satisfied with that exchange. Not sure what happens when black cuts here. N15 is not so big. Right. It's not big because, okay, let's just assume white plays. Capturing here is sort of from the wrong side. So in some cases, black will be able to do stuff like this to escape out into the center. Black still wants to have some potential with those 4 stones on the right. Or maybe black's just going to be playing moves from the center eventually. Black does have this forcing move. Just something like this. If maybe in some cases black's going to be able to, I don't know, do something with the center and make it into a territory. So black might be thinking of just sacrificing the 4 stones. When we get into this becomes, and then black's probably going to play it because it's going to be eventually a forcing move, but it's just an endgame move, and it's not as if that white can play here and have any threat for the next move. So that's one of the things you look for, is whether there's any follow-up to the move when white plays it. And since there's no follow-up, it means that black doesn't have to worry about white playing that move. I wonder what Baduk TV's AI is. It might be some version of Katago, actually. Okay, so I answered that. So that was, I sort of was thinking might play there. So in this case, even if black does capture those 3 stones on the right, it's going to be on a small scale. So sometimes black can play an attachment here. And in some cases, white will just capture the 1 stone and allow black to capture here. It's a kind of a awkward way for black to be capturing the stones. Maybe something like this is going to be forcing. In the end game, maybe it's going to be like this. It turns out, if black is really keen on capturing those stones, it ends up being something like just a little bit more than 10 points. So it's not as if it's a big deal. And white's getting some points towards the corner. So black's not going to be so eager to get into a variation like this. It's just not a big enough scale. On the other hand, what black has accomplished here by playing a move on the 4th line and having white play a move on the 2nd line is that black is sort of building a line of stones to sort of enclose the center. At any point, black can play here. Again, he's not going to do this yet, but at any point he can do that. So black would do that, for instance, after surrounding the center. The 3 was a bit random there. I'm not sure it's the best move. But when stuff like this happens and white is moving out, then later on, sometimes black can use this move to cut white off. So white has to be careful of that. And then in some cases, some extreme cases, I guess black would be using this move. Or sometimes would be trying to be playing forcing moves from above with moves like this or like this, just trying to get some forcing moves from above. So it's perfectly okay for black to leave it after playing this exchange. Oh, but he played that. That's an I didn't expect that. Yeah. So the moment I say he's not going to play that, he played it after all. It's not something that I expected. No. Well, the whole area there on the top side actually is it's small for both sides, so it's sort of light for both sides. It could be I just wasn't paying enough attention, Cyphus. But I do think there is a slight lag in the chats when it shows to me. Okay. Whiskers on Twitch is telling me that he thinks the Korean Baduk AI is Leela based. It's sort of a surprise, but it could be. This is sort of similar to the attachment that white played. It is a kind of a shape move. So as far as that is concerned, it is very similar to the white move played here. So it's the same kind of thing. Okay. Scoob, that's an interesting question. I think that the important thing for me is the ones that are accessible and not, and how the interfaces work and stuff like that. So with you can get AIs like Fine Art through servers sometimes. So like if you go to the Go server, then Fine Art will be showing you diagrams sometimes in matches like this. But you don't get to actually play with it. play around with it, putting diagrams into it and stuff like that. You don't get it to the same degree. So I actually prefer to use the programs that I can actually put on my own computer and have more control over them, which would be mainly it's Katago and Lila. And Katago seems to be stronger. It always has seemed to be stronger, but not to a degree that, like, Lila is still stronger than human players, only there was a period where it had a lot of problems with ladders and stuff like that. If you allow for that and avoid those variations where it might be going wrong, then you can get around that problem. And so Lila is okay, but I prefer Katago because it gives me not only the score, which is the winning percentage score, but it also does give point values. So it gives a score based on how the territory is. So it's interesting to see white playing there without playing the Atari against the one stone. I would have just played the Atari here. And maybe here, like, I would be a bit worried about this move, I think. Even if black cuts. I don't really know which way black is going to play here. I'd probably cut. But yeah. So playing on the right, white's defended the territory. So let's see. That territory on the right, that's going to be a white territory. It's going to be more than 20 points even if white doesn't capture the 4 black stones. If white does capture the 4 black stones, it's going to be more than 30 points. White has something like 20 points in the upper left corner and somewhere around 10 points in the lower left corner. So that's already, like, it's looking like close to 60 points or something like that. Black has to build in the center to make up for that. The fact that white didn't play this exchange, usually it would be some potential there towards the center. I don't see any reason for white not to have played that. In some cases, black can sacrifice that one stone. So it would have made sense for white to be playing it now when it's... I don't see black playing away. Like, this would be a bit painful. So I don't see black ignoring it. Black's going to answer it. And then white could play this variation. I sort of prefer having that exchange in, but it's probably not a big deal. Okay, so white played a knight's move, and black immediately played the hane here. White's going to win this race to capture, so it'll be interesting to see what KJ is going to try to accomplish with this hane. Maybe he can get something in relation to this. So if white connects here, this kind of thing, it's just not, it doesn't look like it's going to win the race to capture. Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a problem. Yeah, so this is already a problem. It's already a problem for white. So when black plays at 2, white cannot connect at 3. So that's basically what black is aiming at here. Just a little damezumari, a shortage of liberties. Yes, Galaxy is strong too. That's another very strong program. Again, it's the access to it is a bit difficult. Yes, on Twitch, people are talking about whether Katago can beat most pros. Katago comes in a lot of versions. Like, there's one for your, there's an app for your phone and stuff like that. And some of them are sort of weakened, depending on what kind of apparatus they're supposed to work on. So the OS and stuff like the calculation strength and stuff like that. So some of them are... I'm not so sure whether they're actually stronger than a pro or not. But the one that runs on a good computer, a retail computer, if it has to have a graphics card. It has to have a good graphics card, and it has to be able to compute better than most of the cheap computers that we have. So it's still a relatively strong computer. But there's a version for people who don't have graphic cards, don't have what's it NVIDIA graphic cards. Strong graphic cards are usually necessary, but I think there's a version of Katago that doesn't use graphic cards. Mm-hmm. Yes. No. No, Katago on my computer beats me, and I usually just study variations with it. So that's how I use neural networks myself. I just learn from them. Um, I put in variations. Actually, I do play them, but I don't play to the end of the game. I usually just studying the opening that way. The various versions of Katago, I think they probably have the same neural networks. Um, but I don't really know how they're differently set up. I think that the neural networks themselves are probably not taking up that much room. But you should ask a computer scientist. I'm not, I don't really know. I mean, the weights are probably the same. So it's a sort of interesting place for White to be spending a lot of time. I guess White has two choices. So White can play on the right if this doesn't look good for White. But of course, for the time being, this is perfectly okay. So Black can continue like this and like this, and nothing bad is going to happen because White has some extra liberties there. So that was okay. And there's not really anything on the outside, I don't think. I wonder if Black can do something with this. It doesn't look like it's going to succeed. It was a bit tricky, but I think White's okay here. And the other choice would be to play on the right. After playing the knight's move there at n10, it's sort of annoying to be playing on the right, but this is the other option. And again, White's going to be winning the semi even if White plays here. Looks like White's winning the semi. Anyway, so for instance, this way White's winning by one move because Black has no way to fill a liberty. Okay, so that's the way they played. Okay, I got that one in time. So again, locally there's no problem for White. Let's just do that semi once more. So if Black cuts here, White can play here. And White wins by one move. So there was nothing serious, you might say. But Black does get to capture that one stone on the right. So for instance, if Black plays here, White would probably have to, let's see, in an endgame situation, White would probably answer it with something like this and would still be able to win the semi. But White would not be able to connect the one stone. This just looks too dangerous. For instance, this would be a collapse. Yes. So white's probably going to answer something like this. So that gives white 12, 14, 16, 18, slightly more than 20 points. In most cases, those 4 black stones, they still have a way to escape. So for instance, if black plays here, these 4 stones can actually escape out into the center. But I don't think in this board position, I don't think it's very likely that black's going to try doing that. Not in the near future anyway. So for the time being, these 4 stones, if we say they're going to die, it's more like 30 points for white. Or if they do escape, it's more like 20 points for white. On the right side, white has 10 points on the lower side, a bit more than 20 points on in the upper left. 50 to 60 points. Black has a bit more than 10 points in the lower right corner, and more than 10 points in the upper right corner, and the potential in the center. So it depends a lot on how big black's area on the left side gets. And so it probably you could say the game depends on that. So it gets back to the game variation, see if they played any moves. Oh, black cut, okay. So still black has that forcing move at S4. Yes, so going back to that, that's actually a 64 standard trickiness. That's a valid question. So I'll go back to it. I think it was basically like I was saying that this should be okay, but there was a lot of aji here. So moves like this. This would also be one way that black could conceivably be playing moves forcing from the center. But this was really a lot of bad aji where white had to... Playing on the right side here, it probably wouldn't work with black playing stuff like that. This would be a win for black. So I was showing white playing here and connecting on the right. I thought it wasn't working for black. But it is a lot of bad aji. So avoiding this kind of problem later in the game. He played this way. And white is winning by 1 move. So black is starting to surround the left side. So it all depends on whether they play peacefully from here on or not. They don't usually do that, do they? But white could be heading into an endgame now, or could be trying for something special. So if white's heading into an endgame, you would see white playing moves like... This is actually a very big move here for both sides, because if black plays there next, that corner has some bad aji. So exactly what kind of bad aji, for instance, even if black just goes straight into the corner, there's going to be an issue with the cut here. So for the time being, white can probably win the race to capture. White can probably win the race to capture. But if sometimes black can extend his liberties with a move like this. And it gets really... So like this would live in the corner. And so it gets really complicated. White can kill this, but there's going to be a race to capture. So there's that. Or if that doesn't seem to be working, then black can be trying stuff like this, using the aji from the side. Once black gets that stone at 2, there's all sorts of things that can happen in this corner. So like when white does this, it all connects up to make a living shape. So that's how the move is really big for black. And when white plays there, for instance, with something like this, you can see how it's expanding the corner. Also, it's getting rid of the forcing moves at the 3-3 point. So in the other variation, black had that forcing move at the 3-3 point or at the 3-2 point. So black had these 2 points that black could play. And this is taking them away from black. So In this case, the corner would be super secure, and you can see the black side territory is decreased by at least 5 points. So that's the idea with this kind of move. Otherwise, black can extend here. Slightly more aji towards the corner. So in this case, there is some aji towards the corner. For instance, with stuff like this, sometimes can be troublesome. But if white plays here, it's going to be okay. And in this case, the side is open, so there's some extra potential profit for white, with in the future jumping in here. So that would be the negative side of black playing it too. So that's how white playing it at 1 here. It's a huge endgame move that the players are probably eyeing already at this point. It's already a pretty important point. Okay, that's an interesting comment by Scoob, saying it's surprising that the young players, they're in their 20s, are so strong and they're the best in the world. And they start studying very young, and you would think that a little more maturity would be beneficial. And I have a kind of a theory about that, in that I think that computer programs, these superhuman computer programs, have made it possible for younger players to get stronger more quickly than they used to be. So it used to be that in just a few decades ago, a player did have to kind of mature and get a lot of real life experience in order to be able to play a decent game. So basically a decent opening. So the opening is a very difficult part of the game for us. It has always been a very difficult part to study. And so even the strongest human players, you couldn't really believe them 100%. So you had to sort of digest what they said and get your own viewpoints and find openings and stuff that were working for yourself. And when we finally got AIs that were stronger than human players, it turned out that a lot of the things that we took as true turned out to be not so true, at least according to the computer programs. And so the fact that people can sort of start by memorizing all these variations that they're getting from a neural network, and then start to finally, at the level of these players, they've digested it to the point where they understand the meaning of the moves to a certain degree. And so they can handle positions where the opponent has not played what was the suggested move, but plays something else. And then they understand that. So the process there to starting to knowing openings and then to digesting them to the point that you know how to use them when the player plays different moves, it happens much more quickly. So that's one of the reasons I think that younger players are much more formidable. Okay, so white didn't do that. So white jumped in here. And yes, Daryl Bangerter, thank you very much for your present. I can have some coffee with that. So instead of playing, when white does not play that move on the second line there, so when white does not play this, the drawback of this move is that if white plays all of this, it's really reinforcing black. So when they do get into a fight, then there's less potential for white to do anything inside of that black area. And so the fact that white is not playing that, it sort of indicates that he's thinking of moving in and trying to scrap that black area maybe. And it's going to make it a more complicated, more exciting game actually. Playing on the internet, GoDave mentions that playing on the internet also is something that made it easier to improve your game for young people, and also for people living overseas also. Now we can get some strong American players and European players. Young players can get strong in those countries, whereas when I was young, there was no internet, and I actually had to come to Asia to get strong. And yes, KJ was really strong before AI, and he was young. I'm not sure exactly what his age is, actually. I think he's a bit older than ShinJinseo. Age 10. Okay. Um, Photon 101 is asking, how do you think KJ chose F10 rather than F11, H10, or 811? And that's a really tough question to answer. But let's put it on the board just to show. This move here, where black played here, maybe he could have played here. F11 would be this one, H11 would be this one. It's really difficult to make that choice. So there is probably some reading he did involved with variations like this, or what if white plays inside like this. So generally you try to play away from your thickness, away from your strong positions, which would be the black position in the center and the black position in the lower left here. So a kind of a balance here. And he's relatively close to the upper left two stones that black has, because he's probably still worried about white trying to get in between there, because that's the one part of black's moyo that does not have a living shape, basically. The three stones there that I'm showing on the upper left part of the board are maybe the one group that black has that potentially could run out of eyes. So it could be coming under attack. And when you do attack a moyo like this, it's often a good idea to be heading for the weakest part of the moyo, a group that maybe you can counterattack against. So I think he's sort of striking a balance there. The position here is still so wide open that I would say it's still impossible for even players at this level to actually be reading out any meaningful variations as to how it's going to turn out in the end. They are trying to read out to a certain degree. But there's a lot of kind of, you might say, intuition involved in the choice of this move over the other moves suggested. So like other moves that seem realistic might be, all of these 4 points, they're good points. Although the center seems sort of small, and black does have a solid position there in the center. So I would tend to choose maybe one of these two anyway. So one of these two, it seems a good balance. So it's sort of just visually, this seems a good idea. But I can't do any better than I tried just now to explain why. Okay, so here black is sort of pausing. Black has a forcing move against the lower left corner, and maybe there's a question of whether he wants to play it or not. So black can play here, for instance, and that would be forcing. So white would have to choose between playing here or trying a bit more with this one. Sort of dangerous, though. So black can cut here or play a hane here. So black might be thinking this would be the natural way to continue. One of these two. Playing here doesn't make very much use of that forcing move that black had on the side. So when black eventually does, if we assume that black is going to play at 3 eventually, then 1 is in a bad place. It's a weird way for black to play. So it seems better shaped to be playing it this way. Okay, so he started from the corner. So that was another option. He's getting just a little bit more out of it, maybe. So if white plays to chase that black stone, he'll probably just squeeze. And this way black gets some more forcing moves with G17 and so. So white will probably capture and something like this. I guess he's just trying to get a little bit more, that 1 extra stone at e17 might come and be useful at some point. Yes, I understand Leonardo da Vinci. Yeah, I understand that it has sort of simplified the openings and that there's less diversity. I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to change again. As the computer programs progress, they do gradually get stronger, apparently, and they sometimes change their minds. Like they're continually developing these computer programs, so the neural networks are renewed every so often, and sometimes they get different ideas. Like their biases can change eventually. So you never know. And people like to try new things. So people will there's some people who are trying to make 3-4 points work better with the computer programs. With some study, they can find variations that are allowing it to work. So people can still innovate while using these programs, even if they believe what the scores that they're getting, to a certain degree. And like everyone has already agreed that a 60-40 difference in the score is probably not something to be all that worried about. Okay, so this is the variation where black can play an Atari at e15, but doesn't really. Yeah. He beat me to it, but he doesn't have to play the Atari because it's always forcing. So there is the advantage there that black didn't have to play the Atari, and he's not going to. So these 4 moves that have been played in the center of the board, if white cannot accomplish anything with them, I think white has lost something locally in the center of the board. So white probably has to try to make something out of it. Try something in the center. Okay, Rick Rubenstein is asking about F13. It's a shape you see sometimes, but it was sort of off the map for me. I wasn't expecting it. So like going back to that position, you might recall that I was sort of I was pretty much focused on playing this point. So that's a point that, like, if white plays something really slow, it's going to be really annoying when black plays this point. So it's something that was really bothering me. But the fact that I want to play here, it also sort of signifies that if white plays here, it's going to lead to a game where white's not even. So I don't know if black's going to answer this way, but for instance, it's going to lead to a game where white's not trying anything special in the center. So it's, for instance, something like this. So this kind of game where white's just going to give that area to black. And it's going to be a endgame. So this would be a relatively peaceful endgame. But white would be giving up on the idea of invading there. So I was sort of pointed towards this kind of thing. And this is the opposite of that, so it was completely off my radar. So yeah, when this happens, Wang DB is asking me to count the territory now, but it's really difficult to do that because this whole center area, white's just played an attachment here, black answered here. The whole area here is going to be very volatile, and so everything in the center of the board is a question mark. So white still has something, there are some white territories, so like the right side, that's 20 points for the time being, plus the potential of capturing the 4 black stones in the lower right. So if white captures those stones, it's going to be more than 30 points. If those black stones escape, just if we look at the right side alone, it's something like 20 points. So white has 12 points in the lower left corner, about 20 points. I'd still say that's probably a white territory. There's some potential logi there, but nothing serious. About 20 points still in the upper left corner, so that's slightly more than 50 points. Black has something like 25 points in the 2 corners on the right side, but then I can't count the left side. I don't know what's going to happen. If black plays very peacefully, then this is just not working for black. So black's going to be playing a bit aggressively here, and the result is that I don't know how far into the left side white's going to get. And so it's not territory. It's not something that I can count. Right, both sides are committed here. ShinJinseo just wants to live with this group. And so like I said, he has 50 points plus the potential to capture those black stones in the lower right. And black has something like 25 points, so black needs 30 more points in the center and the left side. And there's not so much space to do that. It really bothers me that white never played that. Like, white could have played this cut at the first move, so this cut here. In order to play it, to be sure that it was forcing, white probably had to play it at this point. So I still don't get why white didn't play that cut. And when this kind of fight starts, sometimes it's just not going to be forcing anymore. So that's something that sort of bothers me, and that white didn't play that cut. So like if white played it now, maybe black would just start surrounding the center and ignore it. And it would be a lot more difficult for me to evaluate. Okay, back to the game then. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that cut that I was showing just now. It just looks like in many cases it's gonna count into the fight in the center. The fact that these 5 black stones there are going to be sort of liberties because of that cut. It's going to make a big difference. So I'm sort of eager to have that cut in as soon as possible at any point. And yes, GoDave is 89 is commenting about how it's much harder to attack than to live because of the point that some other people were talking about, how chasing this white group is going to reduce the black territory more. So like if black wanted to salvage some black territory, maybe black would be playing something like this. And with this forcing move, black can do stuff like this and capture that stone. This would be the more leisurely approach. But even in this case, a lot of that black territory on the left has sort of disappeared. But when black does stuff like this kind of thing, then black's really allowing white to get into the left side. And if this does manage to live, it's going to be very destructive of black's territory. So in that way, it's kind of a turning point, and also a very scary thing for black to be trying to kill white here. Oh, so black captured the one stone. So obviously, I would say white's going to push through here. I guess this is the general idea. So it's a kind of a defensive move, which takes away some potential for white to counterattack. But it will give white, if black continues like this, it will give white some room to be escaping out into the center with something like this or like this. But knowing ShinJinseo, he might just go further in. He's like that sometimes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he just jumped. So he's leaving some potential though. I would have pushed through, but maybe it was a bit dangerous. And so white's basically saying it's okay for black to play there. So this would be, this is actually a very big move. So if black plays here, it looks like it still could get close. But white's apparently okay with that. Maybe he has something planned on this side. But I would have definitely wanted to push through. Looks like he's sort of satisfied with the position. Okay, Go Dave 89 tells us that both sides have 21 minutes left. But if black plays here, I would have the impression that the territory is actually pretty close, just based on that calculation I was just doing, where I was saying white had about 20 points on the right side, 12 points in the corner, the lower left corner, and close to 20 points in the upper left corner. So that's about 50 points, plus the potential to capture 4 black stones in the lower right. Black has about 25 points on the right half of the board. When black plays at 1 here, this left side is starting to look closer to 30 points. So it looks pretty close. And then there's some thickness, some strength in the center. F18? F18 is like the fact that black did not, it was a Thumper that pointed out that sometimes black can play here. So the fact that black did not play this move, when we get into a variation like that, where white has played here, it becomes less important to play this Atari. And in some cases, black can play here and build a territory on the lower side of the board. So it's actually a real possibility. But as I was saying before, the lower side basically is sort of endgame, just to surround this side. So this would come after the fight in the center. It would be more important to continue fighting in the center of the board, I think. Okay. So when black plays from this side, black is going to reinforce from the center and is probably planning to continue an attack against white. Obviously, white's going to protect the corner. So black did lose some potential there. So lost some Magi. And now that white area on the top side, it's more than 20 points. So it's even close to 25 if we count some points on the left side there. So black did lose some territory by playing this exchange. That means that when black does something like this, there has to be some kind of an implied attack. So it would be maybe something like this. Otherwise, that exchange in the upper left corner is not working. Right, so it does look difficult for black. And when he's played this exchange of e4 and d5 for strengthening white's corner territory, losing territory there, he has to be more aggressive. He's not going to try to continue surrounding territory in this case. So this would not really match well with black playing a move like this, which was, I was suggesting this in a different position. After playing that exchange in the upper left corner, this is, I think it's just not working. So that exchange that black has just played, it sort of implies an all-out attack against white in the center of the board. Oh, so I was wrong. So that's not how KJ felt about it, apparently. So he annoyingly ignores it again. This is sort of a Sente move. Black would usually answer it. Although he might, I would still be tempted to try to attack white in the center. But I guess he feels it's just okay as it is. Maybe he's not so worried about that route. Okay, so black connected. So after this, the left side, it's still a big move, for instance, to be playing something like... So let's just forget the center for the time being. I would be playing moves like this or like this, just trying to reinforce the center. I might still want to cut here. If we look at territory, then again, it looks so dangerous with the weak center. So let's assume white's not going to do that. Moves like this are really big when compared to black playing something like this, which would have a Hanetsugi on the first line. So that's a big point. Capturing the 4 black stones here is a big point. And the lower side, it's still not very big. So the center, this point, this point. And the rest is probably endgame. Right. Yes. I agree with Jung Lee. It's a tough spot because there's so many places that white can play. You have a lot of choices in this endgame. And it's starting to look like when black plays a move like that inside defending the territory, this does reduce the value of the white stones, because if black does eventually manage to kill them, so if we made a variation where white did that, and black somehow managed to kill the white stones, probably losing something in the process, then in some cases white can just reduce from the other side, and it's going to be okay to sacrifice them on a small scale. And when that kind of thing happens, that black move at E11 is going to be wasted. And so once black plays this kind of move inside black's territory, it's inside black's territory in the case that black captures those 4 white stones. So it's a move that reduces the value of going after them, and it becomes less likely that black's going to do that. So it is actually an option that white could leave the center and play a big move, for instance, like this instead. Just the fact that capturing the white stones there, compared to capturing them immediately, it's getting smaller. So the implied attack is less valuable. Okay, so white finally played that cut. And it's immediately obvious that those 5 black stones on the outside there's some potential to make use of their shortage of liberties. So very directly, just from this side, it's already threatening to capture. Or white can try something, probably not this way, that would probably be a bit too aggressive, but somewhere around here would be another way to be trying to make use of that. White has a lot of forcing moves in the vicinity, so like even something like this. In a pinch, white could be using moves like this to make shape in the center. Interesting. Yes, so it looks like they're both pretty even on the time. On my screen here, it says that KJ has 17, 18 minutes, and ShinJinseo has 13, so something like that. Okay, that's an interesting move. So white's looking at escaping with the 1 stone in the center on both sides. So there's kind of a double threat, although while escaping with this stone is pretty serious matter. Let's see, how is black going to answer that? But escaping with this stone it's probably not so important. White would probably still be using it sort of indirectly, and to connect up to the corner, maybe. It's kind of an annoying move. Like, black would like to be able to protect in an active fashion. But there is some oddity of white actually pushing through later. I guess this is okay for black. I guess this is going to be okay. Black can capture these stones. So maybe white's not going to do it. Okay. And then white did save those stones. So yes, I didn't quite expect that. But white is creating some potential of, for instance, in a variation like this, white would be creating potential to escape in this direction. In this whole sequence of Nongshim Cup games, I've noticed that while ShinJinseo plays this territorial game, he's very active with actually what start to be his weak groups. He's looking at these counterattacks. And for instance, in his game against Miyu Ting, for instance, he was ahead in territory, and then he was playing all of these aggressive moves, starting Ko's and stuff, to more clearly define his lead. So he's actually, not only is he taking an advantage in territory, but quite often he's looking for more active ways to counterattack. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thumper is asking, can black not cut white's center stones in two? Um, they're sort of elastic. It depends on what you're talking about. Like, sometimes it would be losing a lot of points in the process. So, for instance, I wasn't really seriously thinking of a move like this. But if black does this, black can cut them in two. Maybe it's not going to be good enough. But yeah, ShinJinseo is not going to let that happen so easily. Maybe he's going to try something like that, which would capture the black stones. So it's sort of difficult for black to pull that off. Okay, but this is similar to Thumper's idea. So maybe black's trying to cut white off. It's certainly a counterattack. The northeast side. Okay, it's right. Whiskers is asking about the white in the center, the northeast side, I suppose. Black does have a lot of influence, but white also has stones cutting black off. So And these 3 black stones that black has towards the upper side, they're not so strong either. So there are things that white can sort of aim at to attack black. Also, in some cases, let's see, something like, oh yes, something like this. Some cases white can play this way with either a squeeze or, so like this would be a kind of a squeeze. White would probably continue like this, a big squeeze there. Or if black connects on this side, white can connect. So that would be one way white could try to save that stone, the cutting stone there. In which case, like, it would be a real threat against black on the right side. So there are some issues with black trying to cut white off here in the center. Oh, white pushed. Yes. So people say that white's at 92%. Scuba's just told us that white's at 92% now. In a fighting game like this, maybe it's not so certain. But ShinJinseo does very well with a high percentage also. So in order to cut, black would probably continue bumping against. There is sort of an issue with this one still. So like this would, the right side would be more important in this case. So white would be getting enough back. And it's going to be difficult for black to cut now because of this stuff. So it's not working. Or if black plays here, pretty similar, I guess. Like if this kind of thing happens, that's a net. Or this is bad news for black too. So it doesn't, it's sort of difficult to cut white here. Okay. It's black's turn. But he's started, so he probably has to continue. Maybe pushing. Now, if white goes for get the net immediately, black can push through here and save the stones. So this would be more of a trade. Maybe okay for white. White would be capturing the 3 black stones here in the center. Yeah, so I guess that would be good enough. Unless white wants to play here. This looks like it's feasible also. So that's not, maybe just pushing through here. And it's going to do, it has to do with this move. This is probably the key move that is going to make it difficult for black. So at some point. Yes, I do get the feeling that white's okay here. Right. I think ShinJinseo has about 10 minutes left, according to the screen I'm seeing here, and KJ has about almost 7 minutes. So they're getting fairly close to running out of time. And they will have 1 minute overtime. Okay, Pirate Dunkelbart is asking, did I start teaching with the rise of the internet, or did I do it before? Yes, I did do it before. Um, but of course, it was much more difficult to teach people overseas when I didn't have the internet. So it's actually, I think in my case, it was the event of AlphaGo playing Lee which I was the English commentator for, was what sort of woke me up to the power of YouTube as a way, a platform to communicate with people overseas. Because that event, it was watched by people who did not, were not even Go fans. So there were like a million people, million views at least, in the first day even. And so it was quite impressive, and that sort of woke me up to the idea that maybe I should be doing this too. But I think in the end it took an epidemic to give me the time to actually get started, because YouTube is pretty, it's challenging in its own way. On the screen I'm watching here, KJ still has 4 or 5 minutes, so maybe a few more minutes. Okay, Steve Donnelly is now asking me about the AlphaGo KJ event, and that was after Lisa had played. It was about a year after that, I suppose. I think it was 2017, so maybe almost 2 years after that, a year and a half something. And just about everyone knew that AlphaGo was going to win, because not only had it beat Lisa, we had seen the series of games that it played on the internet that were called the Master Series now, and it was even stronger than the Lee Sedol version of AlphaGo. So when it played KJ, I think that was the final um, version of master, or the same setup, where it was using human-derived material for its beginning, to get it started. So that was the first. It did learn from human games in order to create the neural networks. So it was still, strictly speaking, it was still a version of master. And it was after that came out AlphaGo 0, which did not use any human income at all. It did not use any human information. And so by the time it played KJ, no one doubted. It had already beaten 160 games straight in its games against top professionals. Thank you, Scoob. Thank you for the present. But with AlphaGo against Lee Sedol, which is maybe what was the meaning of the question, with AlphaGo versus Lee Sedol, it took one game to see that it was going to be tough for Lee Sedol. And then after the second game, I was doubting that Lee Sedol would be able to win a game. Derek Niels is asking, oh, Daniel Relia, thank you very much. A lot of support here, thank you. So Derek Neal is asking, do I like YouTube and Patreon more than my previous ways of interacting? And it's just that without these platforms, it's just very difficult to get to people overseas. So it's like I don't have any good options otherwise. And I think actually the Patreon platform is really good because I don't really have to worry about anything but to provide services for the people who are supporting me there. So yeah, I should try to find my Patreon link now that I've talked about it. So I'll give everyone my Patreon link if there's anyone there who's interested. There are various rewards for supporting me on Patreon. And so it's a way of supporting me and getting something interesting in return. Like you can get early access to some of my videos. Or you can get a teaching game, a monthly teaching game on the highest tier right now. And that will be on OGS. So that's a Go server, the name of the Go server. So thank you to anyone who's interested in supporting me there. And it works really well. I think they do a good job of connecting me to to people who are interested in Go. So, okay, they moved forward one move here, so yeah. I was digressing, but he wasn't playing anything, so yeah. So this move is important in that the position in the center here is sort of volatile. So we don't know what's going to happen to these black stones in the center. And so, for instance, if something had happened to kill those black stones, so for instance, if something like this, just a situation like this happened, obviously this would cease to be forcing. So there's some meaning for black to be playing this before they continue playing the fight in the center of the board, because white cannot connect that one stone. So if white had connected here, this would be really bad for white. This is just dead. Black wins. Or even if white pulls back here, this is dead too. So white has to answer that. If white had left it, black would still be able to play here, and this would still be bad for white. So for instance, if this happens, black's still winning by one move. So white has to answer it, and by playing this exchange, in the rare cases where black might end up sacrificing those 5 stones, black will probably find a good time to play this exchange also. And it does reduce the value of these 5 stones if it turns out that black ends up, this is just, the meaning of the moves is, there's not much meaning, but for instance, just a hypothetical case where black gets something in the center in return for sacrificing those stones. It's a good thing to have that exchange played before that happens. So now white's looking pretty comfortable in the center of the board. And white still has that hane, which is going to... Oh yeah, so black's taking care of that. So if black had played something like this, then later on this is going to be really, really annoying. So if black plays here, white can connect up. Or if black plays here, this is pretty ugly shape. So white's going to get something out of that too. So that explains this move to me. And they're back to playing something that looks like an endgame again. So in this position, white's still probably not very worried about those stones in the center. And could be starting to think about playing a big move such as this one. So a move somewhere around here or here would actually, in a case like this, it would sort of provide something for white to connect up to in a way. So it does function a little bit in strengthening the center. Or maybe here, something like that would be reinforcing the center to a certain degree. And black could still try to set up some kind of a fight here. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to turn out. Or white could just be the more honest way of playing would be to doing something like that. I don't know. It looks like white does seem to have a small advantage. It's still a very close game though. Okay, on my computer it says that ShinJinseo has about 7 or 8 minutes left. And KJ, yes, he probably is in Byoyom. He's the server here is showing him at 50 seconds, but it looks like he's in Byoyom. Okay, is white gonna protect that group at all? You know, he probably doesn't have to anymore. Okay, let's get back to the game. Alright, so something's happening here. White played here, and black wedged. So I think white was trying to reduce the black territory even more. Uh-huh, that's interesting. Chris Davis says that there was a discussion online about how ShinJinseo mentioned in an interview that he waited until Byoyomi to unleash a trick play, or basically an attack that was an attempt at a decisive attack that was sort of tricky. I think that's like the time is a real thing in these games, the way they use their time. So personally, I think it's okay to be playing maybe moves that are dangerous when your opponent has used up all his time. Because using up the time is a decision he's made. It's not as if you have to be nice to him just because he's used up his time. So I think it's okay. Okay. Question: the whole discussion here is getting a bit philosophical. So I don't know. But I'll pick up on the one comment that Shuko once said is go his 100 steps path, he's only walked 7. And strong players, a number of strong players have said similar things. So for instance, people would say that if there was a perfect player who understood 100% of the game, then all I know is something like 4 or 5%. And that was said by people who were world champions. And so it's the kind of thing that strong players sometimes say. They don't feel that they have a full understanding of the game. And in that way, I think that's something that I think is a valid statement. I think it's true that, and of course, computers have shown us. And I think the computers themselves, that programs like Katago or Fine Art, they still only know a fraction of the game. They're probably still less than halfway on their way to playing the best that they can eventually, because they're still improving. Yeah, so it does sort of lead to that philosophical discussion of what do we know anything after all? I don't know. Okay, so after this exchange, white always has the clamp here. So for instance, this kind of thing. White always has this clamp, which is going to be doing a fairly good job of giving white 2 eyes. Otherwise, white could even, I'll leave it there. So yeah, so it's not as if white's going to be in any real danger here. And white can, 1 is a big move that's really, so if white plays 1 here, then that right side territory is going to be close to 35 points. And white's territory in the upper left, it's close to 25 points. So that's 60 points already, and white has more than 10 points in the lower left corner. So that's 70 points. That's a lot of territory. It's a lot of territory for black to have to catch up to. In the upper right corner, black has close to 20 points. Black has a total, I just sort of quickly went through all of black territory, close to 60 points. So black has about 60 points and needs to build more than 10 points more in order to be in the game. So without a decisive attack against white's territory, black will get some territory on the lower side, but without a decisive attack against white's center, I think it's difficult for black. So to get back to the game, just in case they've moved forward a bit. Okay. So, suddenly white's playing fairly solidly here. So white pushed, and this is threatening the black 4 stones there in the center. So if black plays somewhere else, and white plays, I guess white would play it like this, then those black stones will be cut off. So that's one of the threats that are shown there. And black answered here, so that captured those 2 white stones. And white connected. This is threatening black on the left side. Looks like black has to add a stone there. And he played the lower side. So maybe it was hard for me to see whether that move was bigger than capturing in the center. But he's chosen the side move. And it's black's turn here. So white's very solid suddenly in the center. If black plays here, white could just push through here. White already pretty much has two eyes. So for instance, white not only has two eyes, but white has this kind of squeeze here, the potential squeeze from this side, which will make it easy for white to connect up. Or if black plays on this side, if white plays first in the center, there should be no problem there. So that's settled. And it's just territory. White has more than 20 points, close to 25 points in the upper left, and at least 20 points on the right side with the center still undecided. And I guess let's see, how's this lower side going to turn out? I'm not sure how much territory white can count on this lower side. But yeah, there's got to be some there. Maybe 15 to 20 points. And some territory in the center even. So that's, I'd say 20, 40, 65 points at least. Black has about 30 points on the left. Black also has something like 65 points. So it depends. Still, a great deal depends on how the lower side turns out and how this right part of the center turns out. Because black still can escape with these stones here. If black plays here, white's probably not going to... maybe not going... I'm not sure about this. But looks like black will be able to save these stones with something like this. So maybe white's not going to connect there. So playing here fairly soon is going to be a big move. So these are big points on the lower side. This is still a significant endgame that white can probably play with Sente at some time. But apart from that, it's just the center of the board and the lower side here. And the rest is like it's pretty elementary. Like there's this stuff on the upper side. This is usually going to be a forcing move for white. So I would imagine this kind of shape. And then we run out of moves on the side of the board. So it's just the center here and the lower side that are really difficult to continue with. Okay, so he took the one stone. So he didn't save the 4 stones. I was going to save the 4 stones. And black plays on the second line. So playing on the second line like this, the sides of the board get bigger as the board fills up like this. So the center of the board, as far as territory is concerned, is really small. That's why they're not playing it yet. And especially now that black has settled the position on the right, now white has slightly more than 30 points there on the right side, actually. Yeah, more than 30 points. And so that center position is pretty much settled. Both sides have groups poking out into the center. It means that no one's going to make any territory to speak of. It's all going to be very small territories there. So white has to decide how to play against this move. Looks like white's going to win. But black is playing in a very calm fashion. So white has more than 30 points on the right side, 25 points on the upper left, a few points in the center. So that's already 60 points. Looks like white's going to get about 20 points in the lower left. So white has something like 80 points. Black has about 30 points on the left side. Probably, maybe a bit more. Maybe about 25 points in the upper right. So that's 55, 65, 75. Has trouble getting up to 80. So it looks like it's a win for white, but KJ is playing very calmly here. So it could get close if he does a good job with the endgame, I guess. And the G8 white group is no longer in danger. Let's take this opportunity to do a kind of a recap of the game just for people who came late or something. So they started with this parallel opening, a modern opening, and this pincer here is a move that black can play, and if white plays the pressing move here, black can push through and cut. This gets into a really complicated variation, but it seems to be okay for black. And that's as far as I'll go. I could talk about that for hours on end and still would not be able to explain it completely. So the players were playing very quickly here. It seems that this was kind of an established variation in their preparation. So preparation for a game, and they're playing a prepared opening, is something that never used to happen, but it's become a real thing nowadays, I think. Something that came with the AIs, you might say. So this is where we were getting this kind of information from fine art, which wanted black to play this attachment at various points. So the idea would be to get some extra strength towards the corner. So in this case, black would have a relatively secure territory, whereas in the game, he did have to deal with this kind of stuff. And so white plays here. And this was actually a ladder breaking move. So if white plays here, this variation, not only is there a cut at K3, so in this variation, black would have a cut here to attack the upper side, but also the ladder here is the important thing, where black has a ladder breaking move here, which would enable black to escape the ladder. So let's see, it's like that, and he can already escape. Yeah. So that would be bad for white. And white takes some territory. The game already looks okay for white, if you ask me. So maybe it had to do with that attachment at Q9 that fine art wanted to play so hard. But it's still a very close game, and I certainly wouldn't feel safe at this point. So they finished here. I guess this was reasonable. And this is where I was feeling that white seemed to have a lead in territory, so I would be thinking of moves like this, but this would be leading into an endgame, and it would be a close game probably. And so there would be difficulties in taking this to the end, as well as the difficulties. It's just a different type of difficulty. So it's okay to play a fighting style also. So that's what happened in the game. And black cut. And they got into this fight in the center. And people who had access to the computer programs were telling us that it was a good percentage for white. It's more hard for a human player such as myself to actually figure that out, you might say. It's hard to see the advantage for me. So in this whole exchange, white threatened black in the center here, and has established a living shape. So after this, white doesn't have to worry about that position in the center, because if black plays here at some point, where did white play in the game? White played here? Oh no, white played here. So if black plays here at some point, white can push through here, and white's already has this opportunity to connect up. So there's no problem at all there. Or if black plays here, white could extend one of these two moves. White should have no trouble living in the center. So yes, so they're heading into an endgame here. That was a big move. It would have been a forcing move for white. And they are close to ending all of the big side moves. So there's a big move here, which is sometimes forcing for white. Sometimes. Moves like this are pretty big. Or sometimes white can play here. The center is pretty much used up. So there's nothing much else. There's just a question of how they're going to finish this area. So something like this might be or maybe this way, might be a significant move here. White might play this one first. So white might play here. And it's sort of questionable how black's going to answer that. And then maybe here. Something I would be thinking of doing. This would make the lower left corner larger than 20 points. Okay, so white curled around. Let's see. White played an Atari here, and white curled around. This is going to be forcing for black. And the question is, how does black answer white's move at J16? And if black answers, black's going to play this. He's in overtime, so he's going to use the whole minute. If black does something like this or like this, it becomes actually weaker against this, where black has to pull back. So in the case like this, I think it's probably better for black to be pulling back like this, in which case white doesn't get the endgame move on the first line. And after playing this, maybe white's just going to finish off that territory like this. So they finished the upper left corner. Well, people are asking me, do I think that KJ still thinks he can turn it around? And I can only say I don't know. Well, I've been giving estimates of the score. It's still really tricky to correctly calculate at this stage. And we now have computer programs that give us these figures, like people are saying Nihon King live stream is 99.5% for white, or stuff like that. And we still don't really know what that means, because towards the end of the game, even a half point will be something like, it will be well over 90%. It will be close to, in some cases, it will be 99%. A half point difference. And so, even at this level, they can make mistakes that lose a point sometimes. Like top professional players obviously they play reasonably good moves. Yes. Oh, Rick Rubenstein was asking me a question. Do I get nervous when I'm ahead, but my opponent plays very calmly? Of course I do. But more worried, not more than I'm worried about missing a trick or something. Actually, calculating the territory sometimes is a bit tricky, because the way I'm calculating it, I'm basically making estimates. So, for instance, in this position that black's just played a forcing move on the upper side, I would be estimating it something like this. So white's played an endgame move, and the follow-up endgame move at this point, playing at 6, it's a fairly big move. It's almost as big as the original move that white played at 2 and 4. And so it's sort of reasonable to say that locally this is sort of the way you expect it to turn out, but it's just it's just an estimate. And so, of course, in some cases, black's going to get that endgame. And that's going to be a difference of something like 8 points when we compare it to white playing this move. So if we compare that to this diagram, locally it's a difference of about 8 points. And still that's an estimate because we don't know whether white's going to play that move. Or maybe black's going to play it and we don't know whether white's going to fight the ko or not. So there's all these things that are uncertain, even though we have an estimate that usually works very well. And that sort of works into the what I said about players, even at this level, can make a mistake of 2 points. They can make a misjudgment of 2 points also. Because when we estimate like that, sometimes it's quite often it's going to be a point off. So depending on who plays the final significant move, there's usually a 1 point difference. And so it can easily be, it's just an estimate of the score, it's going to be 1 point off. Or if you're unlucky that day, then it's going to be 2 points off. And so that's even at the higher levels of professional play. And so when I'm talking to you guys at the same time as making my calculation, I'm even more unsure of my calculation. And I'm just feeling relatively safe because everyone says that the computers are giving white 99% or something. But it's not as if I have a very detailed calculation that I'm confident about. So that's sort of, I sort of mixed in all the questions that I was getting together. I'm just not, I'm pretty sure white's winning. But we'll have to wait and see how it turns out. That said, I could make another estimate of white's territory here. This white territory in the lower left, it's 17 points for the time being. And that territory on the top, it looks like it's, I would call it 24 points, 23 points. So that's 17, works well with the 17 points, so it's 40 points. And this right side is probably at least 32 points. Oh, that changed the white territory there. So now I'll say that territory is 21 points. So that's 38 points. And this is 32 points. So that's 70 points for white, plus this area in the center. So I'd say white has about maybe 5 points in the center, but maybe less. So that's 75 points for white. Let's see. I'll just check to see I haven't missed something. That's 21, 31, 38. So 70 points plus the center. So let's call it 75 points for white. Black has maybe close to 35 points on the left side now. Black's got a bit extra there. Capturing these two stones probably. So at some point, yeah, at some point if black plays here, he's going to capture those two stones. So that's, again, it's just an estimate. I'll call it 35 points. 27 points in the upper right. 62. 72, and the lower right area is a lot smaller than it used to be. So again, I think it's probably pretty close on the board, as far as I'd say. Right. Well, responding on the bottom is it's sort of annoying. That's Cliz604 saying that he's surprised at N2. N2, that's a big move. That's about 8 points, right? It's a difference of 8 points. It's bigger than responding on the bottom. On the bottom, so, let's see, yeah. Get back to the game. So, let's see. So here, if black plays here, and at some point white plays here, that's threatening a double Atari. Sort of annoying, right? So if black plays here, then white gets the bottom two. So it's really annoying that he's sort of getting forced about on both sides, and he only has this this is about so if we say it's like this, that's a total so 17 points. So in the game, black played this move and white gets to play here. Now if black answers that, it's still going to be something like 15 points there. And so it wasn't such a big deal. It was the Hane at J19 that was big. And after that, it was already reduced by a great margin. So it was probably bigger to connect on the top side there. M18, yes. Yeah, and what if black plays the triangle? Yes, that's a complicated variation. So jumping here is a big move too. So just to go back a few moves, so it's like this. White jumped, black took. Okay. Yeah. So the end game is coming to a close here. Like, it's really interesting how they've filled up most of the first line except for this area on the lower side. They have almost no endgame moves left to play on the sides, but they have this huge center, which is probably not going to amount to much. But it is super difficult to choose how to play the endgame. So the lower side, the bottom side here, it's still a big move. Jumping in once more or cutting off the two black stones. But I can actually capture these two black stones by playing here. So this is also an option because it does sort of set up, it sets up another Atari here. Well, I could even play it now. So, sort of. So there's that thing. Or more conventional, maybe just to jump in here. This would be the normal move. So this is still a big move. And the value of a move in the center of the board is still not very clear. So like towards the center, the biggest move is probably saving these stones here, which is a fairly large move. It does potentially reduce black's territory on the left. Oh, white did go after the two stones. So yes, black's going to answer here. This is threatening to pull out at, it was threatening to pull out at M18, and white captured that. So yeah, that was a big move. And so you see how the size of the territories are going to change with every move. So it does make it difficult sometimes to tally up the territories. Because now this lower side is 24 points. And it can still change, but I would estimate it at 24 points now. Okay, Michael Go 361 is asking, is Ichiriki in good form? He beat Iyama twice recently. In both games, Iyama played very well until seeming to throw the games away. I sort of agree with that statement. And I'd say that Ichiriki is in good form, but he's been playing, he's been very, very busy. So he's been playing a lot of games. So I think his shaky games against Iyama sort of show both of those things. They show the fact that he is in good form, but he was also playing so many games that he was a bit shaky. He wasn't playing perfect. I think there was some stress and fatigue that reduced the performance of his game. So that is an issue. But he'll probably be rested up for the game tomorrow. Yes. Go Dave 89. Yes, I was counting the captured stones. I was counting as 2 points. Okay, Marcel Carpinetti, if I'm pronouncing that right, is asking what makes ShinJinseo so dominant? That's a very good question. Few mistakes, yes. Something in his style. Okay, all of those things. So first of all, he's very well versed in his study of AI openings. So not only does he play quite often perfect looking openings that are very much like what the AI would be suggesting, he also understands them in a way that allows him to make good choices when his opponent sort of goes off the map and plays something that maybe was not in his preparation. So he's not only just memorized the moves, but he understands why. And this is true of a lot of players. So I would say it's true of KJ, true of most of the players who are participating in this tournament, actually. Because this tournament is the top 5 players of Korea, Japan, and China. In fact, I think they were calling the Korean team the Dream Team because they were 5 players at the top of the world ranking. They were supposed to be a dream team for Korea. But of course, they needed ShinJinseo to save them this time, but he's doing a good job so far. And the Japanese team and the Chinese team, they're best of their country, so they're very strong players. And what was I talking about? What makes ShinJinseo so dominant? And so in the opening, his understanding of the opening is similar to many of the top players in the world. There's a group of players who not only know how to play these openings, they understand them to the point that they can handle variations. So that's something that's important, but it's not unique to ShinJinseo. But then he doesn't make mistakes in end games. He doesn't make mistakes in the middle game. Like his reading is very good. His end game is very good. It's just part of it is that many players have that kind of a sweet spot in their career where everything is working really well. And so I would say that probably describes ShinJinseo at this point, where his reading is very clear and correct, and he doesn't make any reading mistakes. None that none to speak of, I'd say. And there's the fact that the style thing sort of figures into it also, because he's very good at sort of judging his opponents and having a good feel for where they're going to make a mistake. So when he does have a difficult game where it looks like he's in danger of losing, he's just so good at finding the dangerous variations that seem to sort of hit a weakness in his opponent's style or something like that. And he's just very good at finding that kind of dangerous variation and turning it around. So all of these games that he seems to be just sort of saving with good luck or something like that. I would say that he does have some good luck in that his opponents are making mistakes. But in a way, he's sort of creating that position. He's creating a position that makes it difficult for his opponent to take it to the end. And so that's probably the most important part of his game, the fact that he sort of has a nose for what to do when he's in trouble. Because being a human player, you can't play a perfect game every time. There will be games that you're having trouble winning. And so winning the one games is important, but winning the games that you might have lost is also it's probably more important. Okay, Ikichin is asking why Shibano Toramaru did not participate in the Nongshim Cup this year. Didn't he? I think he did, actually. Yes. I just checked quickly. Shibano was one of the first players that played for Japan, so he was either the first or second player, and he lost. So yeah, he was wiped out earlier in this tournament. Yes, exactly. Godave put it well. He's like that kid in school that always knew what to do to annoy you. Yeah, sort of like that. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Remy. He's saying that he was the first player for Japan, and that must be about Shibano Toramaru. Yes, I think that's right. He was either I remember that he was either the first or the second, but I think he was the first. And I think the idea was that he was one of the top Japanese players, so he was going to wipe everyone out. Um, but yeah, it didn't work out that way. Quiz 604 is asking, which feels better, winning start to finish or coming from behind? And coming from behind is a very painful process, so I prefer to win from the start. And actually, um, winning from the start and keeping in control of the game is actually very difficult also. And so there's a lot to learn from winning that kind of game also. That's another thing that ShinJinseo is good at. Yeah, it still looks good for white there. Okay, Ikichin is asking me a good question I'm not really prepared for. So he's asking any young, relatively unknown pro players who I think are promising, and there surely are. In fact, it's kind of a basic truth with Chinese players that um, some of them just sort of spring out suddenly. And by the time you've heard of them, they're already one of the top Chinese players. It's just that in the Chinese system, they have so many people who want to become professional that it's extremely competitive at the up to the point they become professional, actually. And so once they become a pro, some of them, the best players, will be already ready to start taking some titles. Inquisitor JL is talking about how the prize money in Japan is large, which is true, comparatively. Um, and so because of that, Japanese players are not so competitive in international tournaments. And but just looking at the record, we have to admit that so consistently Chinese players and Korean players have beat Japanese players. I think it's they've fallen behind. We've fallen behind, you might say. The three stones, that's the three stones that white could afford to give up. So when black plays here and black connects, let's do that as a kind of a endgame study. If black connects here, black has taken three white stones and has created 2 points of territory. And so that's a total of a 5-point difference when we compare it to white connecting here at some point. So if white connects here, if we call that 0, then the game, then this is going to be 5 points for black. So it costs black 2 moves to get 5 points. And if white if white takes back at some point, then black only is captured. If we subtract the 1 stone that white has just captured, black has only taken a total of 2 stones. So we'll have a maximum of about 3 points. So somewhere between 2 and 3 points. And so in the total, it's not such a huge move. So like the move that white played here is probably worth about 3 or 4 points also. And so that makes it about equal to the black capture. So when did black capture that? So connecting here was, it was more than 5 points. So that was a 5-point move that white played there. And so it was bigger than black capturing the 3 stones. So white can actually afford to give up those 3 stones. It was just an endgame move. Okay, they're coming close to the end of the game. They don't seem to have been making any serious mistakes. So I'd say it's pretty clear that white's probably kept his lead, and it's going to be a win for white. And it's probably worthwhile just to wait for it to end now. They finally finished most of the points in the center. Moves like this are just this difference of 2 points or 1 point in Sente. So they're coming to the final stages of the games, final moves. Okay, goodbye, Leonardo. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow. I'll make that final decision after tonight, after I finish this. But I would like to cover the final game also. So I'll be sort of planning to do that. I can't really make promises, but just sign up to my channel, and you'll see an announcement. Just turn on the announcements, and notifications, and you'll see what was happening with my channel. It's going to be Chiriki versus probably ShinJinseo, yes. Marcelo, I think so. Just turn on the notifications and you'll get one from my channel as soon as I know for sure. Mm-hmm. Looks like he's resigned, but not on this server yet. But it's I have a cell phone with a different app that says that KJ resigned. I will wait for it to come up on this server. Yes. It does look like KJ resigned, but the result has not come up yet. Oh, yes. They're saying it now. So thank you for watching to the end. Don't forget to sign up to my channel. So let's see. Let's see if I can find the link. For those of you who have not subscribed yet. So this is my YouTube channel. Yes, and yeah, put out the Patreon once more also, just to help people support me if you want to. So thanks everyone for watching to the end, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. I'll set up something to show people what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. So hopefully see you tomorrow then. All right, bye, and thanks for everyone for being here.